Well, meanwhile, here in North Carolina, more than 100 people braved the rain to take part in a May Day rally outside the state capitol in Raleigh to protest a series of proposed anti-worker, anti-immigrant bills. We're joined now by two guests. Raul Jimenez is an organizer with the Triangle People's Assembly, which helped organize the May Day rallies. And Sarah Gillooly is the policy director of the ACLU of North Carolina. We welcome you both to Democracy Now! Raul, let's begin with you. Talk about why you were out there yesterday on May Day, your major concerns here in North Carolina.
So I was out there because there's a lot of attacks on immigrants and a lot of attacks on workers at the NC legislature and, on a national level. You have at the legislature bills like HB 113 and bills like SB 145.
Explain these.
So HB 113 is a bill that would basically create a process to create penalties for local governments that don't comply with immigration laws. So that would mean that would put an end to sanctuary cities. That means that it would also this bill would also make it so that local law enforcement can't use organization IDs, which are IDs given by organizations like nonprofits to undocumented immigrants. So that means that all undocumented immigrants will also be afraid to call 911 or to call the police in case there's a crime. Or even... and
when people are afraid to call the police when they fear there's a crime, that endangers everyone.
Yes, that's correct. Because, somebody breaks into your house. So there's a robber around. You can't call the police because you're afraid you're going to be deported, or the law enforcement is going to deport you or put you through the process of ICE. So you have that. Then you have State Bill 145, which basically forces the Department of Public Safety to enter into a 287G agreement. And 287G is a law that passed quite a while back that basically gives local law enforcement the right to act as immigration officers. So like in Wayne County, if you're pulled over or you're arrested, the police runs through your records in immigration system. So that.
Sarah Gillooly, can you talk about taking on these laws at the ACLU?
Yeah, so the ACLU of North Carolina has been fighting these bills in the North Carolina legislature along with our allies and partners in the immigrant rights community. As Raul was saying, Senate Bill 145 is incredibly dangerous. Not only does it create the only statewide 287G in the country, turning all highway patrol officers potentially into immigration enforcement officers.
And how do they do that?
Through entering into an agreement with the federal government. This is the 287G. This is an arrangement with the federal government, and it would effectively create highway patrol officers who are also acting as federal immigration agents.
So they would be checking your driver's license and also figure out if you're undocumented or not?
It's hard to know exactly what they would be doing under that arrangement, but certainly the intent of those programs is to make it such that highway patrol officers could be detaining people who are undocumented and transporting them into ICE custody.
Are there sanctuary cities in North Carolina?
Raul, do you want to answer that?
As far as I know, there are none, actually, at the moment. I think after last year, if I remember correctly, there was sort of a ban on sanctuary cities in the state of North Carolina, and so a lot of those went away. So as far as I know, there's none.
Yeah, there are none. Sanctuary cities are banned in North Carolina. They have been for over a year now. And this new law goes a step further and creates a process by which citizens can anonymously report their local government or their law enforcement agency as not enforcing immigration law, and then would create financial penalties, withhold tax revenue from any city or law enforcement agency that doesn't enforce federal immigration law.
And these are all in effect?
They are. These laws are pending in the North Carolina legislature.
Raul Jimenez, yesterday was International Workers' Day, May Day. How are workers treated? What were your main concerns?
So as somebody who comes from an immigrant background, my dad worked in the fields, I worked in the fields. The treatment is horrible when you talk about immigrant workers.
Which fields? So
North Carolina tobacco fields, sweet potato fields. As a farm worker, we were treated bad. And all farm workers across North Carolina, they live in deplorable housing. You're talking about housing that has, bed bugs and rats, not even sometimes mattresses to sleep in, holes in the wall. Their conditions are horrible, working 13, 14 hours a day in the heat in the summer, which is when the tobacco is fully grown and it needs to be harvested. And not only that, they're also not paid. Sometimes the minimum wage. Sometimes workers work for $6 an hour in the heat. They do this because they need to support their families in Mexico. They suffer through the exploitation. They suffer through the oppression because they need $6 an hour, which is ridiculous because the minimum wage federally is $7.25, and a lot of workers are not getting that.
And if they complain, they're concerned about being deported?
Correct, yeah.
What about deportations and detentions right now under the Trump administration? I mean, President Obama came to be known as, even by his immigrant rights allies, as the deporter-in-chief. He oversaw the deportations of millions of immigrants.
Yes, he did. He certainly did. We don't really applaud Obama for a lot when it comes to immigrants, and I mean when it comes to a lot of things. But since Trump's presidency, there have been a lot of deportations, a lot of people being sent to the detention centers. I couldn't tell you a number, but everywhere on the news, on Facebook, everywhere you see, people are getting detained, people are getting deported, families are being separated.
You're setting up Know Your Rights seminars around the state?
Yes, there are a lot of those going on around the state, mostly because, unfortunately, a lot of people get pulled over or go into detention centers without knowing exactly what to do. Unfortunately, a lot of people will go into a detention center and sign whatever the detention officer gives them because they don't know what they're reading or they don't know what they're supposed to do. So we want people to know their rights. We want people to know.
What are their rights? So
their rights right now are basically to remain silent, to ask for a lawyer if they need one. Well, they're obviously needing one if they're in an ICE detention center. But they also have a right to appeal any immigration, what do you call it?
When they're held.
When they're held, yes. When they're held, they have a right to appeal and to have a stay, so that way they're not in the detention center the whole time and can fight their case. Because a lot of these people are normal people like us. They're not criminals, And I think that's one of the things Trump has done really well is criminalize the immigrants, criminalize them and put fear in them, and basically their rights is to not be treated as a criminal.
And as a lawyer, Sarah, what you tell people when they're picked up in terms of what their rights are and when they're in an ICE detention facility?
Yeah, I'm not an immigration attorney, but certainly the ACLU is excited by the Know Your Rights events that are happening around the state and supporting them and making sure that people, whether they're undocumented or documented, understand that they have the right to remain silent, that they have the right to appeal, that they have the right to request an attorney, although that doesn't mean an attorney necessarily will be provided to individuals. And I think it's important to note that at the same time that these rallies were happening in North Carolina, these protests on May Day, the North Carolina General Assembly has been debating two proposals to chill those kinds of protests, to scare people away from protesting in North Carolina. One of those bills that was passed in the House last week would remove civil liability for any driver who hits a protester in the street during a protest. Another bill would have created the new crime of economic terrorism. It would have been a new felony that if you were arrested during a protest and your protest caused a business to lose more than $1,000 of business because you were, blocking the entryway or in the street, that you would be charged with a new felony of, quote, economic terrorism. More than 1,700 North Carolinians spoke out against that bill, and we defeated it. But the purpose of these bills is very clear. It's to prevent May Day protest. It's to prevent the Charlotte uprising. It's to prevent North Carolinians.
Explain the Charlotte uprising.
Yeah, back in September of 2016, there was a fatal police shooting of a man named Keith Scott in Charlotte, North Carolina. And people in Charlotte poured into the streets to protest, to exercise their First Amendment rights, to express their outrage. And streets were blocked during those protests. And where appropriate, certainly people were detained when they were violating public safety. But this new bill would create this crime of terrorism for people who are protesting in the street. And that's really about scaring people away from protesting.
Are you nervous, Raul? We've been going around the country. We were just in Vermont, where we saw Zuli Palacios and Kike Pakazar. They were two immigrants' rights activists who work with migrant justice in Burlington. They were arrested by ICE. They were held for 11 days. There was tremendous outcry, and so now they're out. We were just in Denver, and there Jeanette Vizquera has taken refuge, has taken sanctuary in the Unitarian Church there. She was just named one of the most 100 important people by Time magazine. The day after they had a gala in the church, because she couldn't go to the Time Gala in New York, the next morning Arturo Hernandez Garcia was picked up, who had taken refuge in the church 2 years before and had a piece of paper that said he's not a priority for deportation. When AFSC, American Friends Service Committee, called ICE and said, "Why did you take him?" they said, "We don't have priorities anymore," an odd way to put it. But, Raul.
Am I scared? Yes. I have family who's undocumented, who drive around in Charlotte, Mecklenburg County, which I believe is another 287G county. And so I have family here in Wake County that is undocumented. And so, yes, I'm afraid that they're going to get picked up. They're going to be deported by ICE and sent back. And my family has family. They have kids who were born here in the U.S. So, yes, I'm afraid, but that doesn't stop me from, marching and protesting in the streets and telling, Trump and the legislature, the North Carolina legislatures, that they need to stop passing these laws that affect families in North Carolina and nationwide.